Hey everybody. The video I'm about to make is just mostly me talking about the visions that I saw. Please forgive me if I seem off. Because again, whenever I go through these visions, when I go into the ether of my mind to try to grasp it, like one would grasp memories of the past, which these visions were of the days that we are in and what is to come. So it turns my mind to scrambled eggs, essentially. So please be patient with me. That's all I ask. So, in these visions, which I had when I was around 5 years old, they're of the days that we are in today. I knew it for various reasons. God told me it would be 5 by 5, so around the age of 25. I was 25 when I when I got married, and in those visions, I saw my wife that I now have. I saw the children that I have, the beauty of them all. I saw the problems that I would face, personal and otherwise. I also saw the days that we were in, how chaotic everything was, how torn apart society was just by social atmospheres, differences in opinions. In some of those visions, for there were many, I was not a Christian. I was so lost to some of my vices that I was either an alcoholic, a drug addict. Some I was just lost to wrath, some to lust, others to gluttony, sloth. I knew that, at least I know now, that God was showing me this. The Lord Christ was showing me this. Acts 2:17. But then I was just seeing something with my eyes and losing touch of the world that I was in then. And it wasn't just as sweet as seeing a family. In it, I saw what was to come. I saw the great cataclysm. Something happened that was so terrifying. The earth shook. It shook so violently I couldn't stand. I couldn't even lift a finger to move myself closer to my wife, who was screaming. And eventually, when it stopped shaking, I looked outside and I could see fire raining down from the sky, burning down the houses that were around me. I could remember seeing how red the sky looked. It looked like the sky itself was on fire, or like blood. I remember there was a massive EMP. It was so strong that none of the cars worked. Phones were broken. Anything that was technological was gone. But that, if it was just that, I would just go to church. But it was more than that. It's what came after. There's a crackdown, complete martial law. And in the martial law were people of Israel intermixed with our police forces, our FBI, and not just them either. Freemasons, Templars. The police turned into military police. Heck, the way that Israel looks like right now is what it turned out in those visions. And in those visions, I was in Manchester, New Hampshire. I saw armored vehicles, just the way they go through in Gaza. Heck, when they go through their cities too, whenever there's mass protests. But these ones, it was geared for death alone. A few of them I saw people getting steamrolled over by these massive armored vehicles. And as a child, I just saw it and didn't even understand it. They looked like tanks to me, but as an adult, I know they weren't. They were armored land vehicles, transportation devices with, armaments on them. 50 cals, grenade launchers, the usual. They were blue, a dark blue. I remember at this point, there was various visions of this exact point that I'm speaking of now. The ones where I was a Christian, I was still a patriot. I thought I could trust the government. I thought I had rights. So I was dragged away. I was dragged to a synagogue. I was held by either arm. There was a table in front of me with several men of that temple, judging me, condemning me, yelling at me, calling me all these horrible things. And in this vision, I could barely hear what they were saying, but I could feel the hate. They hated me simply because of my love for Christ. And since I did not give up, they drug me outside to a parking lot. And in this parking lot, there was a guillotine. I could see cars to the left and the right of me as they drug me to it. I was just stuck looking at this guillotine and how tall it was. It was shocking. And as a child, again, in this vision, I was an adult, but I had the mind of a 5-year-old. Could you imagine what that's like to see as a kid? I could see a sharp blade at the top, and I could see it was bloodied. There was blood everywhere, and they were dragging away other bodies. They were spitting at me, laughing, cackling, kicking me. And when they threw me down, they forced my head down. And my head was rolling. That was the end of that vision. But that's not the only ones I saw either. Some of those I wasn't Christian. Some of those I gave up Christ. The ones where I was not Christian, I would see people leave one by one. And whenever you would ask, well, what are you doing with these people? Where are they going? Are they going to come back? And they would just reply simply in a very evil way. You want to go to the synagogue? Do you want to go find out? They would put it in such a way that you knew something bad was going to happen if you really wanted to know. Oh, man, my blood's rushing just talking about this. Anyhow. And those ones. First they took my kid's grandmother, then the man that she was with, then they took my kids, and then they took my wife, and then it was just me. They took everything in the house, as they would take people away, because they would go and come back, and they would take things. They would take refrigerators, they would take food, they would take water, they would take all these things they would take, and they would bring them to the minority communities. And I thought to myself, why? Why would they do this? Which explains itself later on. They would keep us segregated. They would force us into communities. Whites were not allowed to go out. You stayed on your property in your house. The most you can go to is if you had a porch, you can get on that porch. That's all you're allowed. Minorities were allowed to leave their houses from daybreak to dawn. That was it. They could not go any further. It was a strict no civilian policy. Like during the night hours, if you were caught, no one saw of you ever again. That's not even the worst of it. The ones where I was a Christian and I gave up. I gave in. Of course, they took my family. They took my Bible. They ripped out the whole New Testament and parts of the Old Testament. And I couldn't read it on my own. After they took everything, they would bring it back. Just the book. Just the parts that they didn't rip out. They would flip the pages for me. Point at exactly what I needed to read. And they would point at how the Goyim were supposed to serve them and to hammer their weapons into plowshares. They pointed at that specifically, saying I had to serve them. That I was meant to be a slave. I was born to serve. That there was no other purpose in my life except that. And then every time I would try to reason it that I would be good and I wouldn't do all these horrible things, they would then start to go into these rants. They would slap me. They would call me all these horrible things, a racist or an anti-Semite. They would find some way to interrupt me and say that I was just going to be a bigot and a murderer. Give me no option to really defend myself verbally. And they made sure that I had no weapons to defend myself either. They took all that away. Well, before all that began. They kept everyone in their own bubbles as they whittled all of us separately away. And in that one, it just got worse and worse and worse. I would think about escaping. And then they would stop by, asking me if I thought about escaping. Like they knew. They could know what my thoughts were. I was not free anywhere. Not even in the confines of my own mind. And then, there was these two women. I remember specifically they were from Israel. They had their uniforms. And they would come in like screaming banshees. They would holler at me. They would slap me in the face. And then they would be sweet to me and then try to flirt with me. Almost to tease me. And then eventually they would start kissing each other. And doing sexual activity with each other in front of me. But they would tell me I had to stand there and just watch. It was, again, horrifying. Because I had no idea what was going on. They were emasculating me. They were trying to destroy me from the inside out. And then, of course, eventually I lost my mind. I could barely see with my own eyes of the world that we're in right now. It was like I had a visor like this all the time, and it was just that which was on my thoughts. And on what was on my thoughts at this point, I had to control it under their own surveillance. It was like an Orwell book. And eventually, I couldn't even feel the world around me. And that was it. That was the end of that vision, because that's all it was for me. Lost in the own confines of my own mind. I had no idea what was happening to me, or what I was doing, what I was being made to do, or if I was doing anything, or even if I was alive. I was trapped, looking at whatever they showed me. Like I was in a simulation, and everything else completely unknown to me. This all comes after the cataclysm. They will try to say that they made it happen, that the angels made it happen, and that they communicate with these beings that fly black triangles in the sky. Oh, I saw that. Those terrified me, because they would just sit there in the sky, hovering above. Barely even a football above, like a football field, barely even that far above us. They would look at it and then point at it and say, yes, if you do not obey us, we'll just talk to the angels and they will strike you down. That's what they called them, the angels. Some of them would call them gods. Repent. The time is coming. It's practically here already. I am the age that I was in those visions. Please, hear me now. The days to come, you won't see this. They'll crack down well before then. It's a slow process. But eventually they'll make sure that there is no way to find these things. And yeah, the puppet in power now, he's on their list too. They're going to use him just like they would use a sacrifice. And from then, none of us are free. Repent. The time has come. God bless you all. Good luck.